So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Holly Stacy, who is joining us from Student Counseling, Health and Wellbeing. And Holly, it's off to you.
Thank you. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Can you see my screen okay?
Yep, all good.
So hi, everyone. My name's Holly. I am the health promotion educator with Student Counseling, Health and Wellbeing. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our services today and how you can support your student. So just a quick overview of my agenda. So I'm first going to just introduce you what is health, what health and well-being looks like in a post-secondary setting. And then I'm going to introduce the different services that we have. So we have student counseling, health services, health education and promotion, and then we also have well-being. So starting out, I just want to introduce what is health. When we hear health, many people's first thought is just about the physical health. However, the World Health Organization actually defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease and infirmity. So health is multifaceted, meaning that there are multiple factors and determinants that contribute to our health and well-being. And these can be both internal and external. So internal could be something like our individual differences, like biological, but also our individual choice. And when we look at external factors, that could be things like social and structural determinants. Health also exists on a continuum, meaning it can range and it can change day to day, week to week, year to year as well. And it can range anywhere from being ill, poor functioning, to being well and optimal. So again, this can change from time to time and is influenced both by these internal and external determinants. So for this, I do just want to introduce folks to the wellness wheel. The wellness wheel, give me just my laser point here. So this is the wellness wheel. It's actually a core framework that we use at Student Counseling, Health and Wellbeing in how we approach health, because health is multifaceted. So as you can see here on the wheel, that there are 7 aspects. We have physical health, which is the one that most folks think about, but we also have emotional, we have social, we have financial, academic, environmental, and spiritual. They're all equally important and they're all connected. So if you think, for example, someone who's suffering with their emotional well-being, that may start arising and impacting other areas of their health as well. Like if emotionally we're not doing well, we stop looking after our physical health. We may withdraw from social settings. We might start struggling academically and financially. So it's really important that when we look at health, we look at all areas of health. So when we look at health in a post-secondary setting, and I'm going to actually focus specifically on mental health because of that wheel, we have all those different aspects, but mental health and our emotions really contributes to all those areas. I'm going to bring up some data that look specifically at post-secondary students and the things that impact the life of a post-secondary student and their academic success. So the first study I'm going to look at looked at the psychosocial well-being of students. So this would be looking at their psychological health as well as their social well-being and their social safety. And the 3 factors that they found impacted this the most was stress, anxiety, and sleep. Another study, and it's called the National College Health Assessment Survey, which was distributed in 2019 across all of North America, but then they had a subdivided it down just to a Canadian reference. Also looked at the different knowledge, health, and well-being behaviors that impacted academic performance. And they found that stress, anxiety, and sleep were the primary determinants. So we're seeing a pattern here. So then if we want to look at York specifically, we also have a survey. So we have the Canadian Campus Wellbeing Survey, which again collected information on the knowledge, health, and well-being of students overall. And this was distributed all across North America or all across Canada, but we have a York specific group. And what they found is looking at mental well-being, 59% of the York community does report average to high mental well-being, which is fantastic. However, that means that 41% of students are reporting low mental well-being. Similarly, we also found that though 60% of the York community reports getting good sleep and are meeting the guidelines, that means about 40% of students aren't sleeping. So if we think back to stress, anxiety, and sleep being the biggest thing that impact the psychosocial health of students, as well as academic performance, what conclusions can we make seeing that about 40% of our campus isn't sleeping and they don't feel well mentally and emotionally? We need help and students need support. I also just want to talk a little bit about the barriers. So we can see that if about 40% of students are all experiencing low mental well-being, it's not uncommon for emotional and mental health to start to slip while we're in school. It's completely normal. But if it's so normal, why are we afraid to seek support? Why aren't students seeking support? So just to discuss some barriers that we see as most common as to why students may not seek support. The first would be structural. So, students are concerned about the cost of the services. How are they going to get there? How accessible is it? Is there something on campus? Is there something in the area? How am I going to get there? Students also worry about finding the right support. You have to find somebody who's qualified, they're experienced, and you're trusting them. So it could be hard to make sure that you're finding the right support. And where do you look for it? Who do you ask? And the other one is social stigma surrounding mental health. And one thing that we really try to talk about and distinguish is there's a difference between mental health and mental illness. Mental health isn't just the presence or absence of a mental illness. It's a huge spectrum, and we all have it, and we all need to work on it. However, when we say mental health, all of a sudden folks just automatically start thinking about depression and anxiety and all the stigma and opinions that some folks might have around those. So we get afraid to talk about it. But we all have mental health. 1 in 5 Canadians might experience mental illness in their life, but 5 out of 5 Canadians, 5 out of 5 students, we all have mental health and we all need to work on it. And so we have structural barriers, we have difficulty finding the right support, and we're afraid to seek that support. And the biggest thing, that common theme these three have, is lack of awareness. So the awareness of where to find those supports, how to access them, and knowing that everybody struggles from time to time, and that's okay. So now I'll introduce to you our services. So student counseling, health, and well-being, which is my department. We are located at the Bennett Center, and for folks who aren't familiar with the campus, don't worry. When they do arrive on campus as part of orientation, they'll get to know where everything is, and it goes into Google Maps, thankfully, because it is a very large campus. But we are at the Bennett Center for Student Success, and we're a unit within the Division of Students. We have a large department, and we have a dynamic team comprised of healthcare practitioners. So we have psychologists, registered social workers, psychotherapists. We also have nurse practitioners. We have peer health educators, which are work study students. And then myself, I'm a health promoter and an exercise physiologist. And we all work collaboratively to support students. And we strive to foster academic success, student development, in an engaged community. And our department is broken into 3 subunits from there. So we have student counseling, health services, health education and promotion, and then we have well-being. And I'm going to talk about each of these in the next couple of slides. So for student counseling, so I just wanted to kind of flag some reasons students do come in for counseling. So like I said, based on the data that I showed you, about 40% of the campus is reporting low mental well-being. And there's different reasons that contribute to that. On here, you can see that we have a whole bunch of different circles reporting, showing different reasons folks come in. And these darker ones are the primary reasons that we found reported by students in 2022. Some common themes: we have stress, we do have anxiety. It's also closely followed by academics, depression, and interpersonal relationships, but mental health does still expand beyond that. So we also see grief, we see loss, we have trauma, identity, sexuality. So there's a lot of reasons students do come in for mental health counseling. So to support the students, we offer same-day individual counseling for students, and it's completely free of charge. The services are offered Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. The office is open until 4 p.m., so students can still come in if they need emergency support, but typically the last session would be at 3 o'clock. And we do offer the sessions both in person and online. We take a walk-in same-day model. That way we can support students in a more timely fashion, so we can support them when they need it, rather than them having to come in and wait 2-3 weeks to see somebody. It's literally just exact same day. They're in crisis, come get some support. To access the services, they just need to come during our operational hours. It is given out on a first come, first serve. So we always encourage folks to come earlier in the day if they can, before we do start to get busy. And then for virtual counseling, they just need to go onto our website, and every morning around 9 a.m. we put the counselors up for the day. You'll see their availability, and it's a little bit more convenient than the in-person, because you can actually pre-select a time slot for that day, and you can kind of organize your schedule around that. But both are available, both are super convenient, and students can even just come to our space and sit and relax. It's really great that way. The counselors also offer short-term counseling. So the walk-in idea is that we know not all students are looking for long-term counseling. Sometimes it's just one day they get overwhelmed, they're stressed, they just need to talk to somebody. So in that case, they can come one time and we never see them again. And that's great. That means the tools and the resources worked and they're back on track. For students who are looking for short-term counseling, we do offer 6 to 8 sessions, which is accessed through that walk-in model. They'll sit down with the counselor. They're going to come up with a plan together, and they're going to help them overcome whatever it is that's getting them in the way of their academics. Now, we do say 6 to 8 sessions. That doesn't mean that they come to 6 to 8 sessions and then they can't come back. Say in the fall, they came for those 8 sessions, they got tools and resources, but then something happens again in the spring semester. They need support again. It's unlimited. They can come back. For students that are looking for more long-term counseling, what we'll typically do is we'll do those 6 to 8 sessions, and then we'll refer them out to another service that can support them as well for a long-term. We also have support groups. So these are hosted by our counselors. So we have psychologists, psychotherapists, and the registered social workers. And they provide a safe space for students to reflect on specific experiences that are impacting their well-being. Currently, we are offering one that's the 2S LGBTQIA support group, and we also have a racialized student support group. And to access these groups, to learn more about them, they just need to go to their website, and they can get the information from there, and then they can contact them directly from the website as well. Because our services are only Monday to Friday, we do also want to make sure that students are supported at all hours of the day, every day. So we do have some after hours partnerships. So the first I'd like to highlight is the Keep Me Safe. So Keep Me Safe offers counseling both by text, which is super convenient, by phone, and by video. What's great about them is not only are they 24/7, available all hours of the day, all holidays, all the time. They also work in multiple languages, which really helps support our international students, and they can support anywhere in the world. So our counselors are only registered to work within the province of Ontario. So if you're an international student or you're an out of province student and you go home, for example, on a break, but you want to connect with your counselor, our counselors cannot support you when you're physically out of the province. Whereas Keep Me Safe can help anybody anywhere. And again, they offer it in different languages. And to access the service, they just need to either go to the website. They can also download the app. They were previously called My SSP, but they've rebranded to a much longer name, which is TELUS Health Student Support Services. But if you search in the App Store, My SSP, TELUS Health Student Support Services actually comes up, which is still great. The other service I'd like to highlight is the virtual health clinic. So on campus at York University, we don't actually have our own health clinic. We only have a third-party Appletree Medical. And the Appletree, though it's great and it's convenient, it can get really busy and it's not open all the time. So virtual health clinic connects students in a more convenient way, either on the phone or by video, and they offer same-day appointments 7 days a week, even on holidays. And they do everything. So not only can they provide mental health counseling, just like Keep Me Safe, but they can also make referrals. So for students who need to get connected to, say, a psychiatrist, or their primary care provider, so they can even just support with other medical things. So you have a cough or flu, they can help you with that. They can order blood work. They do anything and everything that a regular walk-in clinic would do. They just do it online. And this is particularly important for any students who are international and they have UHIP instead of OHIP, because when you use certain clinics like the Appletree Medical, they will take the UHIP insurance, but there's something called copay, and I believe it's $15 or $20, so they're still paying to see a doctor, versus if they use the virtual health clinic and they use the booking code YORKU 2023, York University is covering that copay. So it just makes it much easier and more accessible for all students to access this clinic versus the Appletree on campus. The other service I just want to quickly highlight as well is we have a partnership with Ontario Shores. So they offer cognitive behavior therapy. And I like to point this one out specifically because you don't actually need to be referred. Students can refer themselves to go to get this treatment method, and we know that sometimes a barrier is all the hoops you have to jump through to get help. So either through student counseling, health and well-being, through a doctor, or just going to the website by yourself, you can self-refer yourself into their services, and they will triage it after your assessment to determine what type of treatment you need. So whether or not that's going to be self-administered strategies, weekly individual counseling, group therapy. They also offer it in person and virtual. And the benefit of our partnership is we actually have someone from Ontario Shores physically sitting in our office once a week. So if you are triaged into a one-on-one individual counseling, you don't have to worry about how are you going to get to your sessions. You can just come to student counseling, health and well-being on the day that that Ontario Shores member is there, and you can connect with them that way. So now I'm going to talk about health services, health education, and promotion, which is my department. We are comprised of myself, a health promoter. We have 2 public health nurses, and we have 7 peer health educators. And we all work together to try to create more proactive approaches to health and well-being. So starting with our nurses, public health nurses have a unique role when it comes to healthcare because they focus on the overall health of communities. They utilize a preventive upstream approach to health by providing communities with resources and tools that help them remain healthy and prevent illness, rather than the downstream approach, which focuses on providing individual treatment and disease management. Their role at York University is to provide students with programs and services that create healthy campus environments and help bridge the gap in accessing healthcare services by providing them on campus and meeting students where they are. Some of the different programs and initiatives that they have in place. So this past week, we actually just had our health fair where they brought together a whole bunch of York University specific groups as well as community partners. So to educate everybody on all the different health and well-being services available to them. So obviously we were there. We had food services there. The dietitian was there. We even brought in Toronto Fire. So it was a really fun event, and we plan on hosting this again next year. They're also planning on starting up a vaccine program where they'll bring in publicly funded vaccines like the flu vaccine and COVID vaccines to make it much more accessible to students to get those vaccinations, because it'll already be on campus and it'll be free for them to access. They'll also be doing different workshops and trainings and blogs to help educate folks on things like communicable diseases, chronic illness, and they even have an Ask a Nurse initiative that provide health consultations and system navigations to students at both campuses, so Keele and Glendon. And this allows students to talk to a registered nurse about different health-related questions as well. For health education and promotion, so we offer different workshops and trainings to help support the health and well-being of students. These workshops are fun, they're engaging, and it helps students connect with others. And we cover all areas of health. So some of those areas include substance use, sleep, physical health, nutrition, self-compassion, which self-care and self-compassion is something many students tend to forget to look after because the year gets busy. We also do sexual health, mental health, and one thing we really like to highlight is the navigation series, because not everybody attends these presentations, so they're not fully aware of all the resources available to them. So we offer presentations specific on how to navigate the mental health resources available at York, as well as the physical health resources and navigating queer resources. We also do various engagement activities, because we know some students are interested in health. They want to learn more, but maybe they don't want to sit in a workshop lecture setting. They're going to lectures all day, so they want to do something more fun. So we also have dance fitness. We offer free yoga sessions, painting events. This year we started knitting, and I offer a fitness boot camp as well, open to all beginners. So this is all free of charge. It's really fun. So we really encourage students to take part in this. We also do various outreach efforts. So our peer health educators, which are work study students, they're just other students that are incredibly passionate about health and well-being. And they actually go to different parts of the campus and they promote health and well-being and try to interact with the students, try to gauge where the health and well-being is of the campus, see if there's any trends, and they give out different things. So they give out condoms, they give out menstrual health products, and a whole bunch of different prizes. Sometimes they're snacks. So we're really trying to interact with our community that way and get information out there. And the last department I'm just going to quickly talk about is well-being. So this team focuses on understanding the current needs and priorities of the York community through pan-university approaches, addressing well-being across all York campuses in sight. And the goal of this strategy is that students, staff, and faculty and instructors can flourish and be well in a shared environment. So some examples of what they've done. So they do different community engagements. They have a new student led well-being podcast. So again, work study students very passionate about health, well-being, and supporting other students. And they're the ones that actually carried out that Canadian Campus Well-being Survey. So they're really gathering a lot of evidence-based information that's really supporting a lot of initiatives and programs across campus. It's because of their initiatives that we actually have public health nurses. So a big shout out to well-being. And that's all I have. I know that was a lot of information. Are there
Thank
any
you so
questions?
Yeah, thank you so much, Holly, for kind of outlining some of the health and well-being resources on campus. We do have some questions that came up while you were presenting, two of which I'll read out for you. The first is in regards to students that have insurance. Is there any benefit to having insurance or need for insurance when you want to interact with well-being services and your department?
So our department is completely free to all students, as long as you are enrolled, full-time, part-time, doesn't matter. We don't need your insurance. Having that insurance has its benefits when you need to be referred elsewhere. All students do, especially undergraduate students, do get something called YFS benefits, so they do have an extended benefits. And I don't think we have anybody here from YFS, but students do get automatically enrolled in an extended benefits program. But to access our services, you don't need any of them. We cover everything. It's all free of charge.
Thank you. And for those looking for more information on the health plan, we have it linked in the chat. The second question that came up, Holly, for you was, you mentioned Apple Tree, a third-party medical service on campus. Do you know if folks have to pay to see a doctor there?
So if you have OHIP, you don't. There's no fee to pay to see the doctor at the Apple Tree Medical. It's only if you're an international student. So international students have what's called UHIP, and UHIP is accepted there, but there is copay. So there is that additional fee that they need to pay to be able to see the doctor there. It's not much, but it can add up. It's $15 or $20, and that's why we encourage folks to use the virtual health clinic.
Wonderful, thank you. And then a question from me that I've got for you is what is something that you think parents and families can do to support students as they continue to work through their first year experience?
Um, so I have two. The first is you're already doing it. So making sure that you are aware of all the supports and services yourselves that are available to your son or daughter who are attending university. The university takes a lot of proactive approaches to try to get the information out there through different presentation outreaches. We go into classrooms, not just SCHW, but all departments. But unfortunately, some students still slip through the cracks, or they might forget about all the resources available. So by taking that time to make sure that you're aware of what's available to them, you can now support them and make that referral as well. So say you see they're struggling with their studies, you can refer them to another department such as learning skills and let them know there's workshops about time management. You see their mental health might be slipping, you can remind them that SCHW has walking counseling. So you're already taking the first step on how best to support them in their first year. And the second thing I just want to point out is just making sure that home, so whether or not that's the student living at home or them calling home, just making sure home in general, make sure it's a safe space. It's non-judgmental, so you can keep those open lines of communication. Making sure that your student, your son or daughter feels comfortable telling you when things are going well, when they're not going well. University is a time of transition. It's a time of change. It's confusing. It's scary. So just knowing that you're there for them, you're in their corner, and having that safe space and they feel completely comfortable telling you everything is crucial to really help with that transition.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. We have one more question for you, and before I read that, I'll let the group know. If you have any more questions for Holly after this, please feel sure to put it in the chat. And if we have time at the end of all the presentations, we'll revisit any unanswered questions. The last question for you, Holly, is just what recommendations might you have for any parents whose kids seem to be stressed out about school, but you also notice they're not eating very well at the same time?
Um, so there's a couple of routes you could do. So health education and promotion does offer workshops on nutrition. So you can just remind them that, hey, I see health education and promotion on their events calendars offering a nutrition workshop. How about you sign up for that, and maybe you can connect with some other students. There is also through food services, there is a registered dietitian as well. I believe to access her services, you do need to be on a meal plan, but those who are on a meal plan do get free nutritional counseling through her. And if you're not on a meal plan, she actually posts a lot of great resources online that help educate on nutrition, different recipes, how to make cooking more fun, and also educating on where to find more healthy resources on campus as well. So definitely recommend you check out food services and everything that the registered dietitian, her name's Dahlia, everything that she's offering.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll make sure that my team members put the link to the dietitian in the chat. Next up, we're going to move on to our second presenter for the day. I want to just welcome Assistant Director Megan Morris here from Residence Life, who will be speaking to you on all things regarding students living in residence. So Megan, welcome and thank you. The floor is yours.
Thanks, O'Shea. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. And then I'll just make sure that my presentation works. All good, O'Shea?
All good.
Okay, thanks so much. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today and joining us. It's really, really helpful for us as professionals on campus to get to engage with parents in a proactive way. It's really, really wonderful to see your investment in your student success at the institution. So as O'Shea said, my name is Megan Morris. I'm the Assistant Director of Residence Life. I'm going to share with you really, really high level aspects of what Residence Life does and how your student can be engaged in our programming and in our supports, and then allow further space for your questions and inquiries about residence. So to start off, just really thinking about what Residence Life is. So Residence Life is more than just housing on campus. It's more than just the buildings that our students live in. Really, it's a combination of two different teams on our campuses. One is housing services. So they look at our buildings, maintenance, operations, our residence admissions, and the upkeep and custodial services of the building. So thinking about the physical aspects of our buildings. And then there's residence life, which is my department. And what we do is really everything else, focusing on student experience and student support and community building within the buildings themselves. So our focus is on how to best support students during their time living on campus. And really, quite often, a focus on how we can set them up to be successful as they transition out of residence as well into the rest of their university career. So part of what we do is really building community and fostering connection. We passionately believe in our communities and in these places being the communities where you build your lifelong friendships. All of us work in residence life because we've had those wonderful experiences within residence, and we want to pass that on to other students. We also support mediating conflict and difference. We know when we have large communities with folks from all over Canada and all over the world with different backgrounds and interests, we're going to find some conflict. And so we support our students in navigating that conflict and that difference and learning from each other within that. We also work to support building security and safety through our resident services assistance and our Dons on duty. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but these are our student peers who are leaders within our community, who are supporting our students in transitioning and staying connected and safe throughout the year. We also, and this is sometimes not as well known, we provide learning and development opportunities for students in residence. So I'll talk about our curriculum in a little bit, but our curriculum is an entirely developed and researched program of what we deliver to our students and when, and what we hope for them to learn while they're in our residence buildings outside of the classroom. We also address misconduct in our buildings. We take a very restorative approach to that misconduct, so really helping students grow and learn about expectations in our communities, how they impact others, and how they can take accountability for actions if they end up impacting or harming others. So our Dons and our coordinators work through that. We also, and I would say this is probably 50% of what we do, is we work to support our students emotionally and mentally. As was just said, there's a lot going on particularly in first year for transitions for students. And so we have a lot of one-on-one and individualized support for our students so we can help them get connected to what they need. We also, and this is to that point, provide referrals to appropriate resources on campus in the broader community. So we are a really good triage touch point for our students to get an assessment and an understanding of what's going on for them, where are some of their challenges, and how can we develop a plan with them to get them access to resources to start to address those challenges that they're experiencing. So who works in residence life? So as I said, we have a significant staff related to housing facilities and maintenance of the buildings. But in terms of my team in residence life, we have 3 core groups. So the first is our residence Dons, and this is probably the group that you folks would be most familiar with. These are upper year students who are focused on peer mentoring. We have about 60 of them across campus. They participate in 24-hour on the weekends and evening dawn on duty shifts. And so these shifts consist of our student staff walking through the building, seeing what's going on, seeing if anything's coming up for folks, responding to any concerns that may come up while the university isn't necessarily open, and providing support to students who may have emergencies, whether that's medical or mental health, or even just feel like it's a little bit too noisy and it's past quiet hours, and so they'll respond to those pieces. They also engage in the implementation of our curriculum, which again, I'll go into a little bit further, but some of the activities that we have that we hope build community that are developed with educational programming in mind, really working with our partners on campus with all the resources and the expertise that they have. They also provide referral to support. So part of our program is having one-on-one conversations with students, with all students, to understand where things are at for them and get them connected early on when concerns are coming up. So before things get to a point where we're in crisis mode, we try to identify concerns that might be coming up for them at the beginning, and we can get them connected to a resource to help preventative measures. They're all first aid trained and provide response in that way. And again, they provide some mental and emotional support. Now, I'll shift to my residence life management team, actually, which is on the right-hand side of the slide, because, you know, we see our Dons as the connection point, the ground level support, but we recognize that student staff aren't able and shouldn't have to deal with all concerns that come up. And so we have a robust residence life management team, 8 full-time professional staff who are dedicated to supporting the students and residents. So we have 5 residence life coordinators who are responsible for 1 to 2 buildings and who review everything that the Dons do, who support the Dons in programming, and who also, you know, evaluate and read different support logs for our students so they can recognize when maybe additional support is needed and a one-on-one conversation with a residence life coordinator can be arranged. They, of course, have oversight of our staff, and they also participate in a 24/7 on-call schedule. So while the rest of the institution may be off, my team is always on. We are always able to be responsive, and in fact, we have a half-hour response time to attend to any issues in residence. These 5 professional staff live in residence with our students and our student staff. They are very well trained in providing additional student support. And again, as I said, triaging when we see that bigger concerns are coming up and they may need additional resources on or off campus. And again, they also respond to conduct. So Dons may be the first point when there's an issue in community and there's a behavior that needs to be addressed. And then the residence life coordinators will look at that behavior and see if there needs to be additional intervention to help get that student back on track. We then have 2 residence life managers who are responsible for larger portfolios within our department, but also for supervising and guiding our residence life coordinators. The third team that we have are our residence service assistants. And so these are upper year students. Some of them live in residence, some of them live off campus, and they are peers that support our guest policy. So it's really helpful for us when it's in the evening to know who's in our building and ensure that those who are in our building are guests of our students. And they make sure that is documented, and folks who are coming into our buildings are members of our community or are friends with our community. They can provide referrals and supports, mostly to the Don on duty, and they provide some equipment and game rentals as well. So just moving on to our curriculum, I've referenced it a few times, and I won't go into it in depth, but I do want to talk to you about what our pillars are when we're thinking about all the programming that we do in our residence buildings. So that's anything related to our house meetings, our learning conversations, our programming that we develop, things that we ask students to come to or take them to. And it's really focused on what is called our educational priority. And our educational priority is York residents will engage in transformative experience that foster empathy, compassion, belonging, and a commitment to the enrichment of their communities and one another. So we're really focusing on wanting to develop really robust people and community members. And the 4 areas that we focus on to do that are self-awareness, interpersonal relationships, well-being, and social responsibility. And through the year, we have a number of different activities, meetings, and interventions that are focused on these 4 areas. I see that I've had a couple questions come up, so I'm gonna or there's been some chat, and maybe that's not related to me. No, it's not related to me. Okay, that's fine. So I'm going to close my screen from there and open it up for questions either from you, O'Shea, or if I've missed anything in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. First, I want to say thanks, Megan, for showcasing Residence Life and all of the services that you offer, as well as your staff support, which is great. I did get a question in my direct messages just regarding the access to perhaps more than just microwaves in residence, whether that's a toaster oven or anything further. If folks did want to cook or maybe buy groceries and make more stuff for themselves, are there options like that available to students living residence?
So it really depends on which building they're in. There's different facilities in each building. So I would need to know a little bit more about that, but most buildings that are not suite style, so we do have several buildings that are suite style, the traditional residence buildings have a couple of kitchens that are available and that do have some ovens and some fridges and sinks and things like that. They're usually not equipped to make really big meals, right? But they can be helpful in terms of smaller meals and supplements to the meal plan.
Okay, great. And then as you were alluding to, the suite style residence buildings will come equipped with like a full kitchen and
Yes.
an oven as well, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. One question for me that I have is I want to ask you about some of the student trends that you may have been noticing to this point this year, maybe this semester. What are some trends that you've noticed within residence life? And then two-parter, how has your department been able to support students this semester through navigating some of these challenges or trends?
So I think one trend that we tend to see come up around this time of year is the overwhelm of academics and midterm onset coming up. The first kind of 4 weeks, folks are just getting into what things look like, but then around 6 weeks, around 8 weeks, we're starting to get back some of our first grades and starting to recognize that, oh no, I don't know if I'm keeping up. So one of the things we see is or we try to instill in our students is really getting them to those academic resources as soon as possible before they feel like things are getting too overwhelming. The first semester, it can be particularly difficult to deal with that shift in what academics look like from high school versus university. I'm sure you folks have heard this before, but we tend to expect a drop in averages anywhere from 10 to 20%, and that can be really difficult for a lot of students. So it's really important to get that intervention point early in their academics, both with how their courses are going, but also with planning your academics moving forward. This is a time that it's really helpful to connect with program counselors as you're starting to think about what is the rest of my university career going to look like, so you can map that out. The other thing that we see around this time are students starting to come up or come into some conflict and attempting to navigate that conflict. We tend to see our students be quite avoidant until things get to a point where they feel like they're too far gone. So we really try to engage with our students to develop plans for their boundaries and for how they'll deal with conflict with their roommates, with their homemates, with their suite mates, and intervene in any of those tensions before they become too big. The other point we tend to see is students not proactively engaging with doing their own research and just looking about on how to navigate the resources on campus. So a lot of this information in terms of everything that Holly talked about as well is really right at their fingertips. And so a lot of the work we do when we meet with them is we sit down with them and we open up the website and we help them navigate where to go to look for different things so that they have that as a tool and a skill in the future, and they don't always need to connect with us whenever they're thinking about where do I find XYZ on campus.
Okay, wonderful. And I guess one follow-up question I've got for you is if you could like highlight the way in which Dons are there for students in the building, how they can help maybe support students or find out about when they're having a troubling time and how they can help connect them to different resources as well.
Yeah, so I think we find that sometimes students don't rely on their Dons enough. And sometimes students don't engage in the programs and activities that we have enough either. And we really encourage them to not only, engage in the one-on-one conversations with their Dons that we have set out in our curriculum, but also in those community events as well, because in those areas, that is where we are teaching folks about the wellness resources that we have on campus. That's where we're engaging them in activities around healthy eating and sleep and harm reduction in terms of substance use. So those are, the Dons provide education, and again, they've had over 2 weeks of training, sometimes a month for our returning Dons, on how to identify issues recognize those, report them to the RLC, and support students in getting to the right resources that they need on campus.
Thank you so much. One last question that came in to me directly was just in regards to the dietary services that are available and free for all students living in residence. The question was just, would it be possible to have some of that information reshared with students living in residence so they can access some of that healthy eating, especially during the winter time? And
absolutely. So that is developed within our curriculum. Now, I can't think of where it is right off the top of my head in the full 8 months that we have them. But yes, we can absolutely reshare that. And that's, again, a point that we ask them to regularly engage in the services that the Dons are providing for them so that they can get that information. I do have another question that came up in a direct message to me, O'Shea. So I'll just read that out and answer it. So how can students apply for Don residence life positions, and what's the timeline of application? This is an excellent question, and I didn't focus so much on how engaging in the role of a Don as a job can be so helpful for the development of our students and the development of their career skills and future goals. So we recommend this as such an important leadership opportunity on campus and a really wonderful jumping point to get students to be able to engage in so many other opportunities off and on campus. So in terms of applying, so our applications generally open up in late November and stay open until mid-January. We want to give folks the opportunity to take a look at those before exams, maybe think about applying, and maybe over the winter break they start working on their application and then submit it when they're back in January. We do a number of different recruitment pushes with many different groups on campus. And we really are hopeful to have a lot of engaged engaged leadership from our student staff to be able to support our students in residence. So they should start looking for them about mid to late November, so in a couple weeks, really.
okay, thank you so much. I want to say thank you again for joining us and answering all those questions. I do want to transition into our final speaker of the day, which is Karen Warner, who's a manager within Student Financial Services. Karen, welcome. The floor is yours as well.
Great, thank you very much. And I want to welcome everybody who's joining us today. Just gonna bring up my slide deck 1 second here. Okay, so am I good with the presentation deck? Everybody can see it?
You're all set.
Okay, great. Okay, so my name is Karen Warner, and I manage the scholarships and bursaries portfolio at York University under the Student Financial Services. So we are part of the Division of Students, and Student Financial Services consists of kind of 3 pillars, which is financial aid, student accounts, and scholarships and awards. So, what we know that for students, one of the biggest stressors is their finances. Like, how are they going to pay for their education? Comes up in every survey that we do as one of the leading things that students are stressing about is how they're going to pay for school. So our mandate is really to support students, to provide them with some of the financial support that they need for their education so that they can focus on their academics and hopefully graduate with, a minimal amount of student debt. So what I'm going to do with my presentation is really kind of go through the key items that are going on in the financial world as we progress through the academic year and share some resources with you at the end. So of course, we've already gone through the start of our study period. Our students are enrolled. They've paid presumably their first set of fees, the fall tuition fees, which are due in September. And we did have an application deadline September 15th for our in-course scholarships and awards. So my team is right now in the process of adjudicating those awards, and we will be posting awards and notifying recipients of those awards in November. One of the things that I wanted to highlight for the audience today is about the refund deadlines. So it's really important that students understand the financial implications of dropping a course. The deadline, November 7th, is fast approaching, where this is the last date that a student can get any kind of refund on any fall or full year courses. And so I'm going to, later in the presentation, when we're finished, I'll put some of these links into the chat for you so you can access the refund table. The other thing that is really important for students to think about when they're thinking about dropping courses is the impact to their finances. So at York University, almost more than half of our student population is receiving some supports through OSAP. And so OSAP is, of course, a program for full-time students who are demonstrating financial need. And so sometimes when you're making changes to your course load, the other thing you have to be mindful about is what is that going to do in terms of my student enrollment status? If you drop a course and it makes you a part-time student, that will have direct implications on your OSAP assessment. So before students make any decisions around dropping courses, we do encourage them to reach out to our department, Student Support and Advising, which is the frontline services area for all financial aid needs related matters at York University, so that somebody can give you some feedback or just give the students some feedback on what the implications may be for dropping a course. In November, we're also going to be posting our first round of bursaries. We do offer bursary support, and bursaries are financial needs-based support. So for students who filled out our application, it's called the Student Financial Profile, and I'm going to share that link with you also. The Student Financial Profile is York's one-stop application for many of our programs, including scholarships and awards, the undergraduate bursary program, and our work study program. So that application has been up since before classes began. As I indicated already, the scholarships and awards deadline has already passed, but students still have the opportunity to apply for bursary support and to apply for work study opportunities. And I can talk to you a bit about work study in just a moment. The other thing to be mindful of in November is that we actually put up enrollment blocks in November. So if your student has a balance right now that exceeds $1,500 for our domestic students or $3,500 for our international students, and this is for their fall balance, so whatever was due for September 10th, if they have a balance that exceeds those thresholds, they will have a block on their account at this time, which will prevent them from adding any additional courses for this study period for the fall winter. So if they're already in all of their courses for fall winter, it's not going to be an issue. But if the student is looking to add anything additional at this time, they will need to reduce that course load, or sorry, the outstanding balance to below that threshold to be able to add any additional courses. As we move into December, one of the big exercises that we're going to do is that we're going to report all funding that we've provided to OSAP students to the ministry. So if your student is a recipient of OSAP and they are receiving any kind of funding from the university, we do report that to the ministry on the student's behalf. All of our communications to students when we notify them about awards gives them the message that they should not self-report that funding, as the university will report it on their behalf. So we will be doing that. It may or may not have an impact on their OSAP entitlement. Usually if it's a substantial award, it may change the student's OSAP entitlement because it's considered a resource for OSAP. The other thing that's going to be happening is as we move into December, our student or financial aid section will be confirming enrollment for our OSAP students, which will allow for the release of the second installment of their funding, which will come to them in January. And towards the end of December, students will also receive an email letting them know that their December statement is now available. And that statement will reflect their fees that are due for the winter term, which has a January 10th due date. So again, as we move into January, January 10th is when the winter tuition fees are due. And by, the first couple of weeks within January, students who are receiving OSAP should be receiving their second installment. So you will see that reflected on their student account. And if the amount that's being released to them exceeds what they owe, they will also see funds deposited to their personal bank accounts at that time. As we move into February, we come to the end of the deadline date for our work study program. So our research also tells us that many York students are working to help supplement OSAP and their other resources that they're using to pay for school. And there are many opportunities for students to work on campus. Both of the two presenters that already spoke to you about work study in their presentations and the fact that they have students, they're leveraging student employees in their own services that they're offering. So we offer about 1,800 positions through fall, winter, and summer that are open to both our international and our domestic student population. for part-time employment opportunities that are available on campus. So of course, the benefit is that they're earning, a very good income. They're earning a minimum wage up to sometimes $23, $24 an hour, depending on the type of position that they're engaged in. But more importantly, they're doing work that supplements what many of them are doing in the classroom. And they're building valuable skills that they can add to their resume so that when they graduate, they have that work experience that they can reference in their resumes. Also, we find that students who are engaged in work study actually have a better retention rate, which means that they don't leave university. They're more successful in progressing through their degree. And we attribute that to the kinds of supports that they get, the types of connections that they make, through working with other students and meeting faculty and staff members who they can go to as a resource if they encounter any barriers or challenges. So we really advocate for work study, and we encourage students who are looking for employment opportunities to think about the work study program. So again, if you go to York's homepage, you can search work study. It'll give you a full breakdown of what the requirements are, and you can still apply for work study up until the end of February. In February, we'll also be doing a second round of bursaries. Again, we do bursaries on an ongoing basis throughout the academic year. And we will also have tax forms available for students to access. So students are eligible to submit tax forms. They get a T2202, which is for their tuition that was paid in the 2023 calendar year, as well as it will reflect what their enrollment status is. So if they're full-time or part-time, is there credits that are accounted for as a result of their enrollment status. And then we have a T4A. So for any funds that we issue to a student, any scholarship, bursary, award that we give to a student, that is reflected on a T4A, and students have to claim that as income on their income tax, though the government does exempt much of that income. So we don't expect to see any real impact to students for the funds that they're receiving from the university. As we move into March, we have another refund deadline. So for our winter term courses, the last date to get a partial refund on winter term courses is March the 10th. And again, the deadline for our bursary program will also be in March. We will do another reporting at that time for anything that we have issued since we did the reporting in December. So any bursaries or other awards that were given out in the start of the 2024 calendar year, we will do reporting on that. And at that time, we will be mounting enrollment blocks, which will impact the summer session. So as of March 1st, again, if your student has a balance remaining of over 1,500 if they are a domestic student, or over 3,500 if they're an international student, we will mount a block which will prevent them from enrolling in courses for the summer. So students can reach out to us. First of all, they can make the payment. If they make a payment, once the payment hits their York account, it typically takes the system overnight to update, and then the block will remove overnight. They'll be able to access their enrollment system the next day. And if they're finding themselves in a challenging situation, they're just not able to make the payments, they can reach out to Student Support and Advising, and we can offer them some debt repayment options for how they can gradually reduce that balance and get access to the enrollment module while they're doing that. As we go into April and May, again, we're doing our final round of awards for those awards that are based on final grades in courses, for example, and for convocation awards. We'll be doing those once the final grades are posted. And if any of your students have a renewable scholarship, again, we will be doing the assessments for the renewable scholarships in May once the final grades are reflected on their account. So I'll share some of the links. They may already have been put into the chat. So again, if any student has questions directly related to their finances, we ask them to reach out to Student Support and Advising. They have a variety of ways that students can speak to somebody. You can email, they have an email address, which is rscheck, R as in Ralph, S as in Sam, check, CHECK at yorku.ca, where they can send their inquiry. We ask them to include their name and their student number so we can address the question appropriately. We also offer appointments so students can come in person. We're located in the Bennett Center on the main floor, so they can book an appointment to speak to somebody in person or via Zoom if that's their preference. And we also have a call center, so they can call us at 872-YORK, 872-9675. and they can be speak to a representative via phone that way. So I'll open it up now for any questions that have come in.
Thanks, Karen. So I'll read one question out that was put in the chat while you were presenting. Someone just missed the November 7th deadline that you were referring to in your presentation. Are you able to just restate what that November 7th deadline is?
So the November 7th is the last date to get any kind of refund on any fall or full year courses. So within this window period, if you drop a course this week up until November 7th, you're going to get 10% of the cost of the course back. But after November 7th, there's no refund on any courses that you drop, any fall or full year courses.
Thank you. Another question in the chat comes from Ethan, just wondering, is there a chance for international students to apply for any scholarships in their current academic year based on current academic achievement?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the scholarship and award application actually closes very early in the academic year. It closed in September this year. We try to front end that process so we can get supports out to students as early as possible. So it's too late at this point to apply for scholarships and awards if you miss that deadline. But the undergraduate bursary application is still open. Again, we do offer bursary support for both international and domestic students, as well as employment opportunities through our work study program. So if you visit the Student Financial Profile site, you will be able to access those applications still. And then we will have, actually, we don't really have any scholarships and awards available for summer, but we will have another opportunity, of course, at the start of the next study period. And our application for scholarships and awards typically opens in early August is when the application will open. We do some extensive messaging. I've just put the link to the SFP in the chat. So we do send out messaging to students to let them know when the application is available, and we will send reminders, especially when the deadline dates are approaching. So that's to alert students that they need to go in and complete that application. I've also put the link in the chat to student support and advising if you need to book appointments or need to speak to any representatives there.
Thanks. You also alluded to this throughout your presentation, but if you could just restate, heading into exam season, this is a question for me, is just heading into exam season in a new semester, what are some financial related stressors that you've noticed students typically face as they're a first year student and they're going into their second semester?
Right. I think what the observation I would make is, of course, we're approaching the end of the fall term as they're going into their exams. And so they have, received their OSAP funding in most cases in the end of August, early September, and they're quite frankly running out of money. And so with this year in particular, I'm not sure what's going on. We've received more requests for emergency aid than I've ever seen in my time at York University. So I do want to stress that we do have emergency supports in place for students, both centrally and through the faculties. Many of the faculties have their own support programs. We do get referrals all the time from student accessibility services and from our partners across campus when students come on their radar who are struggling financially. And in student support and advising, they actually do have very limited cash on hand for students who are really in dire situations. So I would say that one of the things that we can do as parents is really speak to our students about budgeting. Because quite often, they're getting OSAP, they're getting some lump sum of money put into their account, and they need to understand that they need to manage that funding. And one of the pitfalls of OSAP is that OSAP actually releases slightly more funding in the fall than it does in winter. So when winter becomes even more of a problem because they get their winter installment and that runs out even quicker than the fall installment does. So again, try to prepare a budget, knowing what you're going to be receiving from your OSAP, and take advantage of all the other opportunities that are available to you. So if you haven't already your student hasn't already applied for bursary support, ensure that you're taking that message back to them that they should be doing that. And again, if they're seeking employment opportunities, there are still jobs available on our job posting site for students through the work study program.
Okay, thank you so much, Karen. If there are any other questions for either Karen or Holly, who presented earlier, or Megan, please feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand, and we can take a few questions before we run out of time this afternoon. And Holly and Megan, if you received any questions after you presented that were direct messages and you feel like they'd be useful for folks to hear the answers to them, feel free to also share any additional questions that you might have received.
There's just one question about kind of related to emergency housing on campus if there is a snowstorm. So we don't have that available, but the institution does monitor for inclement weather, and they will issue notices hours before a snowstorm is expected to hit if we are concerned, and cancel any in-person classes or activities. So students are encouraged, if there are concerns about weather, to keep an eye on their email. They will be issued a notice and they will be asked not to come to campus.
Wonderful, thank you. One additional question just came in the chat, Karen. If you could provide the website in the chat for folks to apply for students to apply for campus jobs, that'd be helpful.
No problem. I'm just looking for the site for you.
Not a problem. Are there any last questions before we adjourn for the day? One question, this is towards Megan and residents. Just one of the parents and family members were asking if there are any supports for students who might be living off campus after their first year. Is there any supports that help students transition out of residence?
So there is an off-campus website that does share some listings that are available in Toronto and some resources on that website. In terms of the work we do in residence, towards the mid-second semester, we do engage in specific programming with our students in residence to talk about how they navigate finding off-campus housing, some resources related to that, their rights as tenants, etc. So they should keep their eye on the programming that we deliver. And we do that in collaboration with student community leadership and development on campus.
Thanks, Megan. We'll take one last question, and I see it in the chat. Karen, you might have the answer for this. Is it possible at all that a student who's domestic has not yet received their entry scholarship or funds?
All of the scholarships were posted at the start of the study period. If the student was enrolled but had not yet paid their deposit, they may have been missed. So if you think that's the case, you could reach out to my department directly at bursary@yorku.ca and to have the student reach out to us, and we'll take a look into that for you.